Hello, everyone. Actually, let me make sure I have two important things running. One would be the timer, and the other would be my coffee. So, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh man, I hope people are going to be willing to wake up this early to show up to hear me give a talk, and it turns out a bunch of you did, so thank you for that. I don't know if you guys were all just hired on Craigslist by the grind folks to hear me this early in the morning, but regardless, I've got 20 minutes to hopefully blow your minds about how we can rethink art patronage. All right, which is kind of wild, because admittedly, not my background. Although I do love drawing cute mascots for all the companies I help start. It's not a prerequisite for success, it's just something I really, really like doing. I really don't know anything about producing art. But I've learned a lot from working with artists about how the internet is changing the way that they do business. And that's an important word to put into this, because I think what is going to make this so interesting and what makes me so excited about the future of the internet is that it's going to let artists be more sustainable. It's going to let artists actually create the stuff that they want to produce on their terms. And it's going to allow artists we never would have had access to before be able to create really great things. But a little bit of background, I most recently got done with a bus tour campaigning for internet freedom across the country. We crowdfunded this thing online, and it's literally half red and half blue. We took it all over the heartland, my buddy Eric Martin and I, and we met with everyone we could about internet freedom, including this random trucker in a rest stop. There are lots of random rest stops when you're taking a bus across the heartland, and so lots of curious truckers ask you what it's all about. And it turned out they all cared about this thing, internet freedom. Whether they knew about SOPA or PIPA, and many of them did know about SOPA and PIPA, and many of them were opposed to it, what they realized was that there was potential here on a free and open internet. And even though no one else was talking about it, this is a Media Matters report from the months of SOPA and PIPA, you'll notice the British royal family got more coverage than SOPA, as well as Tim Tebow, Casey Anthony, the Alec Baldwin plane incident, and even, much to my chagrin as an Armenian, the Kardashian divorce. Now, it shouldn't surprise you, because most of these media companies were also on the list of supporters of SOPA. I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what that means. But good news, the internet said these bills shall not pass, right? A bunch of people, hopefully many of you, called up your senator, called up your representative, and told them these bills suck. They're going to ruin the internet as we know it, so don't you dare vote for them. And overnight, literally overnight, we saw something unprecedented in Washington. This was really cool, because it showed us just what a powerful platform this was. It showed a kind of maturity. It was this turning point in the history of the internet when a bunch of people actually said, hey, hold on, we have might. We have more power than $94 million in lobbying from the entertainment industry, which is what they spent to get those bills written. And it really drove home this fact that makes me so in love with the internet, which is this idea that the world is not flat. I don't care what Tom Friedman says, like, I'm sure the world is not flat. We pay NASA not enough money to tell us that on a regular basis, but the World Wide Web is. And that idea that technologically, so long as we have equal access on an open internet, all links are created equal, right? Any link is created equal. You could go out and you can create a Google competitor tomorrow. And in fact, one of my buddies, a stay-at-home dad in Pennsylvania, in Valley Forge, is working on one right now called DuckDuckGo. That's pretty cool, because you can just have an idea and start it. And this is like my role model for the internet, right? This is what I encourage everyone to do. If you get nothing else from this, this is where I think the future a lot of this comes from. And it's changing so much. It's really disrupting all of the things. But the thing that interests me right now is art. All right, now I want to tell you a story that's going to make you sad, but then hopefully make you happy, and then tell you another story that's going to start out making you a little sad, but then make you happy. So just be prepared for the emotional roller coaster. In March, just a couple months after we had triumphed over SOPA and PIPA, a photo went viral. It front-paged on the R Music subreddit, and then it went all over the internet. And it was a photo of a musician who had his gold record covering his face and held a sign which basically said, I was robbed. I was part of a band that made hits for decades, and I barely even got paid for any of them, and now I am poor. And for years, I've been living with literally no money because the record companies have screwed me. And this story got a lot of people's attention because it really hit home at something. Because for months we had heard the music industry tell us, we are doing this for artists. SOPA and PIPA is for artists. All we care about are the artists. Think of the artists, they said. And so here was someone who they clearly didn't give a fuck about. And the result was a really kind of sad story, but it quickly started gaining attention. And people realized, oh, hold on, this is Lester Chambers of the Chambers Brothers. And with a little bit of internet sleuthing, they very quickly figured out who this was. And a bunch of people online were like, this is effed up. And there was a bit of a donation drive to a nonprofit called Sweet Relief that had been helping him out, but it was a one-time sort of thing. But I thought, man, this would be kind of interesting. Now, I don't know anything about putting together an album. Like I said, I am not at all musically talented. Aside from 2 years I spent failing at alto saxophone in middle school, I don't know anything about music, but I know a thing or two about the internet. So I talked to a buddy of mine named Lerone, and I said, listen, dude, I want to go out to California and meet with Lester and pitch him on an idea. I want to pitch him on an idea to help him create a Kickstarter campaign for his next album. This will be an album that he will wholly own. It'll be one that he will create. He can figure out this, he can get the studio time, he can get the band together, he can do all that stuff. But he needs to actually have an album that he owns himself. And this was something that had actually come out in a debate that I had with a dude who is a strong supporter of the entertainment industry named Jonathan Taplin. And it was a hypothetical in the debate when I referenced Lester, because I'd just seen this thing happen. And I said, you don't understand, like, the reason we fight for this openness and this innovation is because these problems are getting solved every day. They're not solved yet, but we're working towards progress. And the old model clearly was imperfect. And it was very quickly dismissed, and he made some ridiculous claims about Kickstarter and how whatever. You can watch the debate. The point is, I thought, you know what, it was one thing to bring it up hypothetically in a debate. It's another thing to actually just do it. So I called up Lester, and thankfully Kat was able to track him down, and he was willing to get on a call with some random guy for the internet. And he heard me out, and he was like, yeah, sure, you can show up, we'll talk. And we spent a day together. And I and Lerone, this filmmaker, we sat with him, and we recorded an interview as well as a Kickstarter campaign. And he, my God, the stories he told us, like he has literally been taken care of by this nonprofit called Sweet Relief, which is a nonprofit designed just to help musicians who have been screwed by the recording industry. Like, when you have a nonprofit specifically designed to help musicians who have been screwed, like, there's a problem here, all right? Now, he was willing to not only bring us into his home, but also share for hours just incredible stories. I mean, he had some awesome stories about partying with, like, Hendrix and the Beatles. He had some great stories, some of which I can't share publicly. But you can imagine, right? This guy, here is one of the pioneers of rock, of funk. Like, the Chambers Brothers produced hits for decades. If you guys have, I could start singing Time Has Come Today, which I won't do. And you guys will all have heard it because it's been used countless times in video games, in movies, in commercials, and he hasn't gotten more than a few dimes for it. And it's appalling. But it got worse. You'd start to hear these stories about the bad kinds of treatment that he got and the kind of deal that he signed. And just when he thought it couldn't get any worse, he shared this one anecdote. So this is the big Chambers Brothers album. When this album first was presented to him and the band, the producer handed over an album, and they said, look, here's your new album. And the Chambers Brothers looked at it, and they were like, something's not right with this album. There are a bunch of white guys on the cover. And the record producer was like, yeah, we thought about it, and we didn't feel like the audience was ready to see you guys on the cover of your album, so we hired some models to be the Chambers Brothers, but they're white dudes. So, like, can you imagine this conversation happening? But this was the straight, no, the record label knows best. And thankfully, they were able to get enough support within the record company, Records, to get their own faces on their own album. So again, I think of every time I hear someone else from the record industry saying, we care about artists, we're doing it all for artists, they don't give a fuck. The reality was, for all of the success, and I can put actual numbers on this, for all the success the Chambers Brothers had, and this is one specific example, in the European market alone, after 16 years, and in Europe, fairly large continent, here's how much they got paid, $250. So after 16 years of music in all of Europe, $250 is what Lester got paid. So clearly, something's wrong. And that doesn't seem right? Like, the opponents of internet freedom argue that this is, the internet is what is destroying artists' lives. That the internet, the people who use it and the people who are so excited about it are the cause of this. This is stuff that Taplin and levied at me, not literally, they threw at me during things like this debate. And I was like, no, we can work on something. So we got together, we put together a Kickstarter campaign, and I said, listen, Lester, there is a story here. You've been robbed. You really touched the lives of millions of people with your music. We saw the popularity that your post had when it went viral, when that photo went viral. Why don't we just get together a campaign? I don't want to do anything other than help you, shoot the Kickstarter film and do a couple tweets. You're going to own this thing. And he was like, all right, let's do it. So we put together a Kickstarter campaign. And this is the front page of CNN.com on Christmas Eve. And there's Lester Chambers, and that's his son, Dylan. The next morning, literally the next morning, he and his son were on CNN, like television CNN, talking about this Kickstarter campaign, talking about their album. And lo and behold, Lester's time came. We aimed for $39,000 and he raised $61,000. Now, that's great, and he's in the studio right now, and they're recording this album, and we have one of the best, my favorite perks I think ever in Kickstarter history is that we're doing autographed cowbells, because he's like the dude responsible. There would be no, I've got a fever, the only prescription is more cowbell. There would be none of that if Lester hadn't pioneered cowbell back in the day. And so we're getting all this together, and the album should drop in March or April, and again, he's gonna wholly own it. This is one example. Now this is still, and I laud Kickstarter a ton, and they're a wonderful New York-based startup, but what I can't stress enough is this is still the beginning, right? Now, it's great that this has worked for a project, and the next album that he wants to put together, does he go back to Kickstarter? What is the more sustainable model for letting artists do the stuff they want to do? Because the internet's really good at this, right? The internet can figure out the supply-demand curve. I mean, we have all seen, and I'll use Kickstarter as one example, but please don't limit your thinking to just that. We've all seen projects that get funded where you would think, there is no way in hell there is supply for this, or there's no way in hell there's demand for this. There's no way that there could be enough people who would want this esoteric random thing to come to fruition. Turns out there is. These people want to invest in these creative projects because they believe in the people who are doing them, and they think the world will be a slightly better place if they came to fruition. And they're willing to take a chance. They're not thinking of it as an investment. They're not even thinking about it as a purchase. They're thinking of it as a kind of payment, almost. And this gets me really excited because the internet can make what were traditionally inefficient markets much more efficient. Here is one of my favorite cartoonists of all time, Gary Larson, reminding us how gifted those Midvale students are. So Gary Larson's an interesting cat, and webcomics and comics and their history are awesome. I could do an entire talk about the history of comics because it's so cool, but the short version of it is if you were Gary Larson and you wanted to have people see the comics you produced, you had to be lucky enough to get into a Sunday comic section of a newspaper. Now some of you look a little confused. Newspapers were these paper things. They were delivered usually every day. And the comic section was probably my favorite section of the newspaper back when we had those. But it was a very different world. It was one where if you wanted to create mass, you wanted something to actually be seen, which is something I think any artist ultimately wants to do. You have to sanitize and censor your own work to some extent, right? You can't, even when you're producing content for the Sunday comic section, you have to assume that there is some person who's going to get offended. There's some person who's going to get upset, and you have to make something that is suitable for an entire audience. And it'd be interesting to see, even with the genius that we got out of things like Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, what if Watterson had started online? What if Watterson could talk about things that you can't talk about in a newspaper? All that other genius we would have gotten. Well, okay, we're not going to be able to see that unless we can get Watterson online, which I don't know, he's kind of a recluse. But what's interesting about Larson's story is how much chance worked into this. Because the story behind Gary was that he was working, I think, for the Humane Society up in Washington State. And on a lark, because he was getting really depressed by it, he loved it, but it was a constant emotional struggle, and he still loves animals. But he really wanted to create these comics. And so he found a local newspaper that was willing to run it in Seattle, and he went on vacation in San Francisco. And he found another newspaper, the Chronicle, that was interested in syndicating his comic as well. And he thought, if I can get enough of these newspapers to syndicate my comic, I can not only make enough money to leave the Humane Society, but get more people reading my stuff. A day or two after he gets back from San Francisco, the Seattle newspaper tells him, we're cutting your comic. Sorry, it's no good. And if he hadn't, on that random coincidence, gone to San Francisco and actually gotten that Chronicle to give him a contract, he probably would have stopped drawing comics. We probably never would have had The Far Side. And it's thanks to a vacation he took to San Francisco that chance worked into it, that he was able to get that chance and thus continue to have this incredible. That's why I always encourage people to go on vacation. It's important. You never know what's going to happen there. And living in New York is definitely better than living in San Francisco, but you can still go on vacation there. But the world has changed so much since then. And you can have these seemingly esoteric comics like XKCD have literally millions of viewers every day. This is really depressing to me too, because for quite some time, more people were reading XKCD every day, were visiting XKCD every day than Reddit. And it's like, they update 3 times a week. Like, that's just, wow. That's the power, though, of this incredible level playing field. And, you know, a guy like Randall Munroe can produce these comics, be able to make a living. You'll notice he signed that one for a robot, which is just prudent. At some point, they're going to take over, and you want to be on their good side. But he's able to make, you know, selling books, selling T-shirts, and not in any way compromising what he wants to write about, what he wants to talk about. And that's exciting. And we work with them. This is sort of what Rethink does. We help these webcomic artists as well as musicians publish and produce their stuff. And so we do things like, here's a school in rural Laos. So one of the interesting things Rethink does is the non-sustainable profits all get donated to related causes. So if we publish a book, we work with a great nonprofit called Room to Read, which builds schools. Now, this isn't entirely altruistic because kids who can't read will never buy our books. So if we teach them how to read, we're growing the market, right? Very, very sinister. Anyway, we can tell these stories, though. We can get photos from the school, and we can tell these stories to a community of fans of XKCD, and they get excited. They get excited by photos, by us visiting the school. This is me and Christina, who works with me, with a copy of the XKCD book. All it takes is a little bit of storytelling on a blog, and all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people are excited about an idea. It actually puts authenticity into something. And all it takes is, again, a few photos and a plane trip. Incidentally, Laotian kids are really confused when you hand them a copy of XKCD, because if you can't read English and you're looking at these comics, XKCD is a bunch of stick figures, right? So you can just imagine, like, wow, Americans are stupid. Like, they just could draw this. This is just a bunch of chicken scratch. But nonetheless, these new models emerge, and we've been dabbling in some of them. But what I still think, and this is where I want to charge a lot of you with, there's still much more to come. And as this is just a good life rule, this is a gentleman named Zach Weinersmith, who's another one of these webcomic artists, who is able to run a webcomic empire from here, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, which is where he lives right now. And he's able to experiment and try new things based solely on the fact that he's been essentially giving away art. I mean, he produces content every day that gets shared all over the internet. He's able to experiment in things that he's just got enough fans willing to take a chance on. You guys probably remember Choose Your Own Adventure novels. Now, the jerks who started these actually copyrighted the words Choose Your Own Adventure. So when Zach wanted to create his own, we called it an adventure of your own choosing novel. So that's still in the public domain. So Zach wanted to create an adventure of your own choosing model. He's an eccentric fellow, right, with those wonderful, gorgeous ginger locks. He's a great dude, and he had enough of an audience that was willing to say, all right, you normally do webcomics, but you know what? I believe in you. You're gonna make a cool Choose Your Own Adventure novel. Why not? So that campaign started and blew past its goal of 15,000, ended up raised 130. And now you're starting to think, holy shit, like this isn't even this guy's skill set. For the last 8 years, he's been drawing webcomics, and now he's creating fiction. He's creating an adventure of your own choosing novel, but there's support there. There are people behind him. Now, he had to sign a lot of books. That was he felt pretty bad about doing that, but you know, in the end, he was pretty thrilled, right? This is still not seamless. I'm not saying, hey, we're done, art's been fixed, everything's cool, but we're seeing really, really promising first steps. And here's his most recent Kickstarter. It was with a $20,000 goal. It's already raised $216,000 with a week and a half left. And you can go support this if you want. This is a collection of his comics that are all science themed, as well as a bunch of doodles that he's drawn to illustrate famous scientists talking about their favorite science stories. So Adam Savage was the most recent edition, and we're hoping to get Neil deGrasse Tyson, if any of you can put us in touch with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's done a couple Reddit AMAs, but I can't figure out for the life of me what his email address is. Anyway. Here's something again, it's like, can you imagine a publisher being like, all right, let's see, webcomic about science, wants to profile scientists. Yes, we're gonna give you a $200,000 advance, sir. Done, right? No, that just doesn't happen because that traditional model is just not as efficient as a bunch of people saying, you know what, we believe in you, we're gonna support this. Ryan North. an incredibly kind, tall, good-looking Canadian, guy behind Dinosaur Comics, right? Now, Dinosaur Comics is incredible because he doesn't really draw any of it, right? He just changes the text, and he's been doing this for years and building an entire fan base around this wonderful comic. So then he said, I want to do my own adventure of your own choosing novel, but I'm going to make it about Hamlet. Cool, okay. And I'm going to make it in plain English, and you can play the role of Hamlet, the king, or Ophelia. And I'm going to try to see if this audience wants to buy it. Now imagine that pitch, choose your own adventure version of Hamlet, going to any of the wonderful publishers here in New York City. They would just smile and say, good luck with that, kiddo. $500,000. This is the largest publishing project on Kickstarter ever. And it works because he has an audience that he's built, and he's willing to take a chance to do something totally out of his space. Like, there are no dinosaurs in Hamlet. I have checked. And yet the guy who authored Dinosaur Comics has been able to do this. Now again, this is not the final answer. There's still progress, but this is a really good sign, right? We're looking, if we look at our user adoption curves, and these normal distributions I feel like carry out in everything. We're still right around here. We have the people who are taking the most advantage of this and doing this the most successfully, the Amanda Palmers, the Ryan Norths. They're the ones who've built these audiences for years. They are living online. They produce their content first for the internet. When we help Lester Chambers, we're admittedly taking someone who's got a reputation and built a ton of art and clout over the years and leveraging that. But we're starting to see new things emerge as this starts to smear into the later sections. And that's really cool. I mean, it's terrifying for the gatekeepers, but anytime gatekeepers are terrified, it's usually a good thing, right? Because their model doesn't work. We know that, right? It may have had a few hits, some things may have worked out, but it's inefficient. And when we think about the great art, the kind of art that we still look at in museums, the sad reality is most of that art exists because some really rich people were like, hey, artist, spend your days making cool art because I'm going to be your patron. And now I'm thrilled that we have such wonderful works that have stood the test of time as a result, but we have the internet now. We've already seen that a bunch of us in mass can circle around an idea and get something going. And so I wonder, is there not a model of kind of micro patronage? Not something where on a project by project basis, but something where I can say, I really like the stuff you're doing, Ryan North. I want you to be able to create this art. Or I really like what you're doing, person who owns that cute dog. Is it Boo? Like, keep producing Boo videos. Or like, think you could start to drill down to some really obscure random stuff. But if there's an audience for it, why not? So that model, the last one, is broken, okay? We can all agree, right? Double face bomb, it does not work. But there are new solutions underway that we're already seeing bear out that work for some pretty weird people, right? Right? I love Zach, but like this, the fact that this can work, and it can work already for really, really random stuff. This is a buddy of mine down in New Orleans who was able to get an album funded, a Daft Punk tribute via New Orleans brass band, all right? Not a lot of record companies are going to be like, get this guy a contract, Johnson, right? No, and you get 20 grand. Now, I love living in a world where Earl, not just because he's a buddy, but where someone who's got an idea like this and the chops to pull it off can get the funding to do something like that. I love living in a world like that where people are willing to take that chance. And yes, 50% or so of Kickstarter projects never even get funded, and some percentage of the ones that do don't deliver. But we're not thinking of it as investments. We're thinking of it as this kind of art patronage. And again, Kickstarter is just, it's the lowest hanging fruit because it's been so successful, but it is not the end goal. Hopefully one of you right now is working on the next thing that's going to empower a whole nother league of artists to make the stuff that they love. And that's going to make us all better, all right? Because this is still the beginning. These are the earliest stages, and babies are cute, so I'm going to use them to represent just how early into this game we are, all right? Still so much more to be done, and I want all of you to do a few things. Aside from, well, the most important thing you can do is when you solve this problem, or at least make the next big step beyond Kickstarter, email me so that I can take all of the credit for inspiring that idea. No, but here are my action items, which I was told to provide. One, talk to an artist. I would just be curious to know if they've had experience on Kickstarter, if they've ever even heard of Kickstarter, what they think is a reasonable way for them to do the art that they want to do on their own terms and hopefully make a living from it, right? The next question would be, start doing something yourself. I am fascinated right now with the notion of a side hustle. And creative people ought to have some outlet, even if it's just a Tumblr for, you know, amusing photos of Ryan Gosling, who I just, look, I'll be honest, I don't see it. I just, but anyway, whatever it is, some creative thing, some outlet, whether it's you or someone who you know has the skills, and you know it's that friend of yours who's always making really cool stuff, and you want to tell it, like, make a damn Etsy store. Like, come on, there are people out there who must want your stuff. And then do the tweeting, support with the Facebooks or the social media. Find something you really dig and just tell people about it. It is so quickly dismissed and yet so stupidly dismissed as like slacktivism when it's about activism, or there's no clever nickname for it, but when it's about art. But every one of those upvotes, every one of those tweets, every one of those likes actually does matter, because back in the day that was just a subtle conversation you would have with someone and say, hey, this is something, you should check it out, this is something cool. It actually means something, especially in aggregate. And, oh, that's a bad sign. And last but not least, you should subscribe to my newsletter, because I have a book coming out in October, and I want you all to come to the party. And it's going to be all about doing stuff like this without asking anyone's permission, because I'm really, really excited about this whole internet thing. And I have a feeling most of you are too. So if you've got questions, I'll hopefully have answers. Thank you.